Are you ready to double your real estate sales and grow your business like never before? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Real Estate Matters, hosted by Matt Curtis, leader of the #1 real estate team in Alabama for the last 6 years. With over 8,000 homes sold and more than 4,000 five-star reviews, Matt's proven strategies speak for themselves. Ready to double your sales with expert strategies? Let's dive in. This is Real Estate Matters. Let's get started.
I'm your host, Clark Dunn. I'm excited to sit down with Matt Curtis of Matt Curtis Real Estate today.
Yeah, it's great. We've got an exciting topic today, talking about web leads, which I think is really important with all the buzz that's out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something that real estate agents at any level of their career is something that they discuss and something that they talk about. To get us started, how do you kind of get in the mindset before picking up the phone?
Yeah, well, even before that, I think, agents need to think about like the foundation of, what type of leads are going to work. For our team, we really try to focus on what we can control. So like our three main pillars are you drive around town, so you see our mass media, you see our billboards. That's really important to us. Every realtor needs to focus on their past clients and referrals and that side of the business. But the other component that you can control is web leads, their algorithms and who they're going to work with and all the different things and how much they're going to charge. But the web business is what you can really control. So to your question, like it's really important that you prepare your mindset, before you go out and you prospect. And then a lot of different people prepare different ways, but I think, enthusiasm, the IASM, that stands for I am sold myself. If you're not like enthusiastic and you're not sold about making that call, it's going to come across on the phone,
Yeah.
like, because on a phone call, you have words and you have tone. Like email, you only have words. Phone's great because you have the tone as well, but you don't have body language. And so you've really got to be extra enthusiastic and bring that over the phone. So that's one thing. And you kind of have to figure out what it is for you. For a lot of people, if you stand up, you're naturally going to be more enthusiastic. If you're sitting down slumped in a chair for 2 hours, like that first call, you might be good, but 2 hours later, you're probably not going to get the same results, and it's going to come across the phone. And you're going to be like, these leads are terrible. It's like, no, like you were terrible. Like you didn't sell that. And then, everybody has their different routines. Like for me, like my non-negotiables, like every day, first thing I do, my devotion. Second thing I do is work out. If I don't do those things, I would not be ready to prospect web leads, or I wouldn't be ready to do anything else in the day.
Yeah, and it's such a tough thing because, like you said, you can't show the person on the phone what you're doing and how you're acting and how you're feeling. They're just hearing you. So tone is everything, and kind of the atmosphere you're in can really dictate, what comes across.
Yeah, and sometimes salespeople are like, "Well, I'm too concerned about being over the top. I don't want to be over the top." Well, for every one sale that you'll lose from being like over the top enthusiastic, you're going to lose 100 by not being enthusiastic.
And so if you had to pick one animal that best represents how agents should approach real estate, what would it be and why?
So we just came off a fall break, and my daughter wanted to go to Disney World. We went to Animal Kingdom, and they had the safari ride, and we got to see all the different animals. And it just reminded me of what it really takes for a salesperson to be successful. And that one animal was a rhinoceros. And I talked to some new agents the other day. I was like, "Hey, what animal do you think it is?" I told them a rhino. They're like, "What? Why do you think that is?" And they're like, "Well, because they're hard charging. They drove, they roll over everybody." I'm like, no, that's not really the case. They may be hard charging. That's important. But the thing about a rhino is they have really, really thick skin. Things bounce off of them. And that's what you have to be as a salesperson. If you you're making a phone call to somebody, like if you call them at 9 a.m. and you call them at 3 p.m., they're going to be in a different mood, and you can't control that. And so if you take on whatever bad happened into their day onto you, then that's going to be, that's going to wreck the rest of your day. I know there was a story out there once where a salesperson called somebody right before lunch and literally just got cussed out.
Wow.
Like, don't ever call me again, you whatever. And that person was noticeably rattled. And they're like, all right, it's about lunch. It's time to go to lunch. They came back after the lunch break and made the mistake of accidentally calling the exact same person. But what happened was the person didn't even remember what happened pre-lunch. Maybe they're hangry. I don't know. And they ended up selling a home to that person.
Wow.
And so, oftentimes, agents, we all have CRMs and we have all these notes, and somebody else from the team may have tried to work with that client before and it wasn't the right timing. A lot of times agents will read those notes. They don't need to read the notes because the other agent may not have had the right personality. We have different personalities that mesh. But the other thing that could have happened too is you just caught them at a bad day. Web lead calling is like fishing. You just don't know when the fish are going to bite. And you just need to call as, I had a mentor once call it Sinaloa, safety in numbers, law of averages.
Okay.
It's just all about putting in the work, and ultimately it'll be successful.
Yeah, and timing is everything. Like you said, you don't know what's going on in that person's life. You don't know what's on the realtor's perspective. They could be having a bad day too, and they don't think it came across as being that maybe angry tone, but it did.
Yeah.
You mentioned
and just one thing real quick. In real estate, if you have a 5% batting average, you make $100,000 a year. But you're going to have 95 no's. And so do you have thick enough skin to take those 95 no's to find the 5 yeses? And they're not saying no to you. They're just saying, I don't want to buy a house right now, because people don't buy homes every day. Yeah. It's every decade or so.
Yeah, and because it's such a big milestone in most people's life that it's not something that happens a lot, but you always got to be constant with that person and constant outreach. You mentioned a little bit of it earlier, but kind of the differences and maybe the advantages of generating your own website leads versus using Realtor. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges in our industry right now is you see all these teams sell a lot of homes, but they don't really have a business.
Mm-hmm.
They go out and market and they create all these leads, and then they have these teams that they give the leads to, and they charge them like a 40% referral on the back end. Well, the numbers don't really even make sense where they don't make any money. You don't have a business. So it's important to do things that you can control. You might want to supplement your business. Nothing wrong with that. But if you have a business just built on those things, you don't really have a business. They control the marketing. You may have hired agents and trained them and all these different things, but as soon as those leads go out the door, you're out of business. And there's a lawsuit out there right now. And if that were successful, that could change the industry in terms of some of these teams. And so I'm concerned about that for those teams. There's probably 90% of the top teams are dependent solely on those lead sources. And if they don't figure it out, they could be gone in the next couple of years.
Wow. And with so many agents out there, I know as far as trying to, differentiate themselves amongst other agents, how can you become the agent buyers and sellers choose over other agents when there is such a big market of options?
Yeah. Well, there's thousands of agents just here in Huntsville alone. And so I always tell our agents, you've got to get to at least 6, 7, maybe 8 touches. I used to work for a builder and open houses, and I always was thinking in the back of my mind, how do I get to that 6th contact? And, we're 16, 17 years away from when I worked for that builder. And we still have those clients remembering me top of mind coming back. And so they would come in the door. I'm like, all right, that's 1 touch. What's an excuse? What's a reason I could provide value and send them an email? That's, touch number 2. All right, now I've got to get their phone number to follow up to make sure they got the email, see what questions they have. That's touch number 3. Let me get their address. Let me send a thank you note. Something nobody does anymore. But what an easy way to differentiate yourself. And so it's just, playing that game of getting to 6 touches. Some agents, a lot of agents, they speed that process up. All right, well, let me try 6 touches this week. Well, that's, you didn't give yourself enough time. I think most agents throw leads away too quickly. We kind of have what in the industry, we have these kind of ponds. And so you have a lead and you're not working anymore, you throw it away in the pond. The best agents never throw those leads away. They just stay in touch with them. And then after 2, 3, 4 years, you have hundreds of leads that you're working, and they're not leads anymore. They're clients. When they think of real estate, they're going to think of you because you've reached out to them so much. And what discourages agents, is they don't have that thick skin like a rhino. So they're like, oh, well, the client didn't pick up. Well, I know you probably have salespeople that prospect you for various things. If you're busy, you probably don't pick up the phone. You probably don't respond to the email, but it still registered something in your mind like, hey, when I'm looking to buy this, I'm going to call that person. But the salesperson doesn't realize that it did actually make a difference. And it may not make a difference to a year or 2 years whenever you're ready to buy, but it's sowing, and you got to sow, and then ultimately you'll reap the harvest.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's hard to measure that because it's you do all that outreach, you do all that touches, you have these conversations, but like you said, you just never know when that person's going to come back, and you just got to continue to be consistent with those outreaches because the timing is everything. As we kind of wrap up this topic, talk a little bit about your framework and kind of this or step-by-step approach for taking in new leads and what makes it work so well.
Yeah. So like scripting wise, every type of lead is going to come in different. So you've got to approach every script a little bit different. So like a new lead, hey, thanks for registering on our website. A lot of people do this. It's like if the name says Bob, they're like, hey, is this Bob? That's a cue that you're a telemarketer. You're like, no, this is not Bob, or is this a bill collector, or who is this? And so if it's a guy that answers, you just assume it's Bob. Now, if a girl answers and hey, is Bob available? But if it's a guy, hey, Bob, this is Matt from Matt Curtis Real Estate. Thanks for choosing our home search website. What has you looking for a home right now? Just open-ended questions. Tell me a little bit about the home that you're looking for. Some personalities are going to tell you everything you need to know and more. Other personalities, they're going to be a little bit more reserved. And so you're going to have to go through kind of more direct questions instead of open-ended questions. And we like to use a framework called LP Mama. So like location, price, motivation, agent, all those different things, appointment. And you try to get as many of those answered as possible to be able to help, update their home search, send them the right homes. But ultimately it's all you're not going to sell home over the phone. So you sell an appointment. And if you can't get a face-to-face appointment, like for whatever reason, you're not ready to meet for a buyer consultation or go look at homes, you schedule a follow-up. And if you don't do that, you literally just hung up on that client because they don't know what's next. They don't know if you'll ever call again. Most salespeople don't. And so worst case scenario, hey, Clark, if it's okay, I'm going to shoot you this information. You said you're moving from Texas. I've got a relocation guide I'm going to send over to you. And then I'll just call you, by the end of the week, by Friday, to make sure you got it, see if you have any questions on it. Is that okay? And we'll tie down close. Is that okay? They're going to say yes. You have permission. You've got a time that you're going to follow up with. And, that one little thing just keeps moving the ball forward. You just want it's like a yes train. You want a series of yeses, baby yeses, to lead up to that big yes of choosing you and choosing a home to buy or sell with you.
Yeah. And I think, not leaving that person you're reaching out to, not leaving them in the dark, not leaving them wondering, like, are they going to call me back? Maybe I don't need to buy a house right now. Maybe I don't need to sell my house right now. And so that follow up and all those points we talked about today, I think it's incredible because it's a long game. It's not something that happens, overnight. Sometimes it's great if it does, but it normally doesn't. And so, but yeah, I think, these points kind of leading into what it takes to generate leads, take in leads, and be successful as a real estate agent is incredible.
And to follow it up, like a little story, my daughter just turned 15. She can't drive my car because it's under the business. She can't drive my wife's car. It's too big. So we had to go out and get her a car. And we're shopping around town, different dealerships. And it was a really good teaching lesson. My daughter, she's already starting to say she likes sales. But she's saying, I want to do this or I want to do that. Ultimately, I think she's going to be a really good salesperson. So it gave me an opportunity to teach her about sales. And so we went to this one dealership, and the guy, he didn't get my name. He didn't get my number. He didn't get my email address. But he gave me his business card, and he asked, hey, if you have any questions or if you'll follow back up with me. It's like, so that was like one teachable moment right there for all the obvious reasons. And then, another guy, we went into a dealership and we'd worked with somebody in the past, and he was a sales manager, so he couldn't work with us. And so he got somebody else, and that person didn't get our contact information either. That sales manager didn't have our contact information. I don't think he really remembered working with us. And so he just relied on the other person having the information, no follow-up at all. And so lo and behold, what happened? We didn't buy with either one of those salespeople. We bought with somebody else that would actually follow up.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk today. I think, the learning about this, the truth of working online leads is huge. And I think the information that we provided to everyone listening is super valuable. Everything will be in the episode notes. So if you have any other information or want to reach out to Matt, that information will be down below, but I appreciate it.
Sounds great.
That's a wrap for this episode of Real Estate Matters, helping you double your sales and build a thriving business. But real success is about impact. That's why Matt's team has built over 140 homes for families in Central America, changing lives beyond real estate. Loved what you heard? Subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a fellow agent. For more expert insights, visit mattcurtisrealestate.com or find us on social media at Matt Curtis Real Estate. See you next time on Real Estate Matters.